Hello, my name is Carol Gallagher, and I'm the Regional Canon for the Central Region of the Diocese of Massachusetts. And I'm honored to bring you the sermon for the first Sunday of Lent, March 6th in 2022. Today in our Gospel, we hear about Jesus talking about his relationship and his embeddedness and connection to God. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about what it means to move through the season of Lent and be embedded in the heart of God as well. I'm one of those strange people that really likes the season of Lent, and that's partly because the way I grew up. I'm a PK. My dad was a Presbyterian minister. I'm a preacher's kid, and he was also a Navy chaplain. But growing up, the Presbyterian Church can be austere about many things, but Lent, not so much. We would get together and have covered dish Lenten suppers. And as kids, we just loved them. I don't remember any of the lessons or services that we did during that time. All I remember is the community gathered together, all of us singing and praying together and eating together most of all. When we were kids, we were really anticipating the lasagna and the stews and the other dishes, and sometimes we'd have some friends and community members who were Korean and Chinese who would also bring wonderful dishes, and we really enjoyed them being a part of that feast. And we as kids would hope that our table would get called on first, and so we'd rush up and fill our plates, and at the end we'd always get those little ice creams with the little ice creams, individual ice creams with a wooden paddle that we would eat. And I don't remember what else we did, as much as the community gathered together and the celebration, even though it was Lent. And so I've always cherished Lent, even though it's oftentimes considered a time of introspection, a time of separating ourselves, isolating ourselves, going on retreat. But for me, it was always a time to reconnect with community. Years ago, when I was newly ordained, I was sitting with Charlie Longest, who at that time in the Diocese of Maryland was the suffragan bishop. And Charlie and I were preparing some service or another, and it was before Lent, but close to the beginning of Lent. And he was telling me stories about his Lenten experience. When he was a young priest, and for many years, he would give up smoking for Lent. And he was really proud of himself and thought he was really being a wonderful Christian example and martyr almost, because he loved smoking. And he talked about how on Easter, how delicious the cigarettes tasted thereafter. He said then years went by and he was doing this, and he just gave himself a lot of kudos for how disciplined and how sacrificial he was, until he realized that he was doing something, he was giving something up that he enjoyed, but he was also really cranky and difficult with other people during that time. And he said to me, I know that some people wished I was smoking because I was difficult to be with. We oftentimes think we are being pious Christians when we give something up and instead find ourselves struggling with our own humanity and our own way of being. And sometimes we have these romantic notions of what Lent should be, and yet that don't always work out the way we want them to be. Jesus talks about being in deep, connected relationship with God, and that their voices are joined together. And I've often thought about how could we, as Christians during Lent, join our voices with the voices of those who have come before, of those who have been faithful throughout time. How do we join in with those who have been understanding what it means to follow Jesus? When I was a parish priest years ago in the Diocese of Delaware, we decided to do, and it was my liturgy committee, that small little country community. We were thinking of what could we do for Lent. Could we, instead of giving something up, maybe take up something? So what we did is we handed out plastic, those plastic Easter eggs that we give out to the children on Easter, and the children find. And we asked the children to distribute those to all the members of the congregation. And then another group of children went around with a slip of paper. And what they did is they went around, the kids made sure everybody had one. And it's pretty hard to refuse the gift of a child. So they did that, and we spent a minute talking about what it meant to let go in Lent. Let go and let God. And so I invited folks to, instead of giving up in Lent, letting go to God and learning what we might otherwise do. And so they wrote down a relationship or a situation that they felt was frustrating or impossible or painful to them. And they wrote it down on this little slip of paper, and the kids ran around, made sure everybody had pens or pencils, and then they put it in the egg. And then I asked them to take it home with them and put it in a drawer, but put it in a drawer that was visible to them on a regular basis. Some people put it in a drawer in the kitchen where their utensils were, and other people put it in a drawer in their bedroom along their clothes that they regularly reached. And every time they would see it, I invited them to ask God to give them strength and the God to work on the situation and for us to let go of whatever that situation was. Nobody needed to know about it. It was just between them and Jesus. And so we did that. And at the end, people told me about remarkable transformations they had in their own heart. Oftentimes the relationships weren't fixed, but they had spent Lent turning things over to God, turning their difficult relationships over to God, and walking through Lent as a prayer, as an activity of being embedded in the heart of God, letting go to God, and allowing God to walk with them on their journey. And so I'm going to invite us all in this first Sunday of Lent to let go and to be embedded in the heart of God, allowing God in Jesus Christ to take us where we need to be, but for us to leave off our painful places, our relationships that stand in the way of us being close to God, and offer them up to God in this season. And I want to end like I often do, which is by singing a hymn which reminds me of the love of God in my life and how getting through those days are often helpful with music, because music helps me when words fail, when something I read fails. And it goes like this, and many of you know it. This is a hymn that my people, the Cherokee, sang on the Trail of Tears, and it reminded them, even in the worst of times, that God was moving with them, that they were embedded in the heart of God despite the circumstances they were in. And it goes like this. And we often sang this as a blessing at the meals we had during Lent. There was a long time ago Lenten covered-dish suppers. And it goes like this. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Guide me with thy powerful hand. Bread of heaven, feed me now and evermore. Feed